I'm going to talk about digital ethics and responsible innovation. We are living in a new world. The question is it the best of all possible worlds, or what do we have to do? There's a new currency now, which is basically data. Data, people say, is the new oil, and in principle, in fact, we are the currency because our data is being traded, it's being used. There are digital doubles that have been created about all of us, and so there are companies, not just Cambridge Analytica, that know a lot about us and also to some extent what we think. And in fact, the development hasn't stopped. There are companies who want to index human brains. This is your brains and my brain, and basically this research is bringing together nanoscience, nanotechnology in order to provide a rich toolkit of novel methods to explore brain function by enabling simultaneous measurement and manipulation of activity of thousands or even millions of neurons. And that might be your neurons, right? So this is a little bit scary, I would say. Anyway, we need to discuss about those things, and in particular the ethics of these kind of technology that certainly we want to use in a good way. We're also living in a new society, and people haven't talked so much about it, but AI has already revolutionized the way our society works. We might see super intelligent systems soon. AI is already better in answering questions, at least those that have an answer already, and also we have AlphaZero and other software that's basically learning itself how to win against world championships in probably any game, such as Go. And so the question is, could we run society like a giant machine, as if it was a chessboard, basically, with us as figures to be moved around? And some people have been working into this direction, in fact, and this first generation of smart cities and smart nations was geared towards automation. And we know it's not just IBM that's working in this area, it's also Google, Apple, I heard as well, and people have different points of view of those approaches. And what we have to realize, though, that these companies are actually developing operation systems, not just for smartphones and for computers, but also for our society altogether. So Google wants to reprogram our society. Now the question is, who is going to decide how our society will work? And then it turns out maybe China has already overtaken and will determine the way AI will be used. And so what are they doing? You may have heard about it. They have the social citizen score in test, and they're basically everything that people do or don't do may get them plus or minus points. So if you cross the road when there's a red light, if you pay your rent or your taxes a few days late, if you read critical news or have friends who read critical political news, these things would earn you minus points, and in the end your citizen score would determine what kind of jobs you can get, and also what countries you can travel to, how much you have to pay for your loan, and how fast your internet will be, and whether you can still use a fast train or not. So we consider this technological totalitarianism, digital dystopian world. Some people think that's the future and would also be our future, and this is what we need to discuss about, because I believe that there's a better world. We are also confronted with a new legal system, because people rightly say code is law. That means algorithms determine more and more what we can do and what we cannot do. It's kind of establishing new societal laws, almost like natural laws, but it's not being passed by the parliament. And then we need to be concerned about things such as bias and discrimination, for example, against women or people of color. And unfortunately, we've seen that this happens much more often than expected, and in most cases unintentionally so. So it's just kind of either in the algorithm without the programmers knowing about it, or it's in the data. And of course, things get serious if we use these kind of systems for pre-crime, where people may be put into bad situations even before they've done something bad, right? And the British Karma Police program even goes a step further. It was actually maybe the first citizen score system that we've learned about, and it's looking also into what movies people are watching on the web and what radio programs that they're following. So this is basically something like a digital judgment day. It's not about crime, it's about kind of misbehavior. If you travel too much by plane, you might be in trouble when it comes to these kind of systems, right? And so, in fact, algorithms are now being used to decide about life and death situations in hospitals, but also when it comes to autonomous vehicles that you have certainly heard about, this trolley problem. So the question is, if those vehicles can't stop on time and somebody will die, now, who should be selected to survive by this car? This comes across as a way of selectively saving lives, and maybe to decide for the child rather than the grandmother. But then the question, of course, comes up, what about a student versus Chancellor Merkel, for example, or a manager versus an unemployed person? And before you actually realize what's going on, maybe we have established algorithms that would decide about selective killing of people, in particular in the unsustainable world that we're heading towards. And it would undermine values such as fairness and equality, which is basically the basis of our democracy. So, you know, if we take wrong decisions about those so-called moral machines, we would live in a different political system without anyone telling us. Our point of view is it would be right to apply probabilistic approaches that's not using personal data, and which would decide in a fair way. And everyone would get basically an incentive to reduce the risk that our society would impose on people. We have papers on this if you want to learn more about it. There is also a new economy, the attention economy. And so basically what happens is that we're being steered with personalized information in our thinking, in our emotions, in our decision making, also when it comes to elections, and in our behavior. And that is the outcome, right? And that has become also part of our political system, even though nobody told us this. And maybe it's even incompatible with our constitution, I believe. And so people found out how to use AI in order to rule people's way of thinking and behavior. And Tristan Harris, who worked in a Google control room for some time, has explained how a handful of tech companies controls billions of minds every day, including yours. So then the question comes up, will democracies survive big data and artificial intelligence? And what can we do in order to ensure this? Then you might want to read the digital manifesto published in Spektrum der Wissenschaft. Now, what is often forgotten is that in a data-driven and AI-controlled society, we may forget about those things that cannot be quantified, or at least not easily quantified, but which are particularly important for us, such as human dignity, love, consciousness, freedom, and so on. So we need to consider that when we build this digital society of the future. How can we trust IT? Well, first of all, I think we require digital enlightenment. And so really we need to think about ways how to ensure transparency, for example. Transparency is a mechanism of quality feedback and quality improvement. That transparency could be created, for example, by opening up algorithms after, say, 24 months. That means after you've made most of the money with your invention, and then you'd get feedback and other people would learn. Everyone would learn from each other, so maybe that would be a better way than regulating AI. Then also, responsibility, of course, is important, and here accountability plays a major role. Now also, how to keep regulation down but ensure good AI systems. This can be done by design for values, right? So the question is really how to engineer a more responsible digital future. And here's a piece that I published at the World Economic Forum. So it needs to be clear to everyone that society can only thrive if we pay attention not only to one thing, such as security or profit maximization, but many different things, including health, fairness, and so on. So there are many values that matter in different kinds of contexts and situations. We need to be able to pay attention to them with the way we're using software in these situations. And in particular, democracy is an outcome of a long historical process of wars and revolutions. And so there are many design principles of democracy that have really helped us a lot. So why don't we build them in a well-reflected way into the digital platforms that we're creating? And that includes, for example, human rights, human dignity, freedom, self-determination, pluralism, protection of minorities, division of powers, checks and balances, participation, transparency, fairness, justice, legitimacy, and anonymous equal votes, privacy in the sense of protection of misuse or exposure, and the right to be left alone. Another point is really digital empowerment. I think digital technology can help us all to take better decisions, to be more creative and innovative, and to collaborate with other people more successfully and advance the state of humanity all together. An important element for me here is digital democracy, and that is all about boosting collective intelligence, right? So basically it's about learning how to bring the best knowledge and ideas and talents and resources of many people together, and also by the way of AI systems, right? Now why is collective intelligence so important? Because when it comes to complex problems, a single perspective on the problem and a single solution approach will most of the time not be the best thing you can do. It turns out that if you combine the best individual solution with other solutions that seem to be inferior, would create an even better solution. So diversity wins, not the best. And so if you want to unleash really the power of many minds, then you need to create participator opportunities. And one possible format would be city Olympics, where cities every few years would engage into friendly competitions with different disciplines such as reducing climate change, improving energy efficiency, improving sustainability, resilience, and solidarity, for example. And every city would come up in a kind of mega hackathon that might extend over several months with new solution approaches. And those solutions would be open source and Creative Commons. I mean, any city could take any of those solutions that fits the budget, the culture, the needs. Those solutions could be taken by companies, developed further, combined with each other. And so together we would make progress in the world much faster than we can do it today in a just competitive format. So there's a new approach towards globalization called localization, where people would and companies would think global but act local and diverse. They would experiment, they would learn from each other, and they would help each other. An important other element is really informational self-determination, and it follows directly from human dignity, which is protected, but it hasn't been implemented yet. We all know we don't typically have access to the personal data that has been collected about us. But there are digital doubles that have been created of us, very detailed. In principle, we could build a platform on top of this, and this platform would allow us basically to determine which company or institutions would be allowed to use what part of our personal data for what purposes, period of time, and uses, and maybe compensation. And we would have digital assistants, kind of a personal AI system that would more or less know our privacy preferences and with what companies and people would be ready to share what kind of data, and would pre-configure everything so it would be really easy to use. And so all the personal services and products would be, personalized products would be possible, but we would have a level playing field. That means not only big business, but also small and medium-sized enterprises and spin-off companies, scientific institutions and NGOs that are trusted by the people could use data, our data, if we allow this to happen. Governments would be allowed to make statistics in science too. So we would all benefit from such a platform. Also, combinatorial innovation would be promoted, right? So why don't we do this? This would make the time of big data compatible with human dignity and informational self-determination. Another thing is the question, of course, would artificial intelligence take over? And it depends on how we build these systems. So, of course, we can build systems that would take decisions for us. Assume that we would have to decide for yes or no, and there are basically 6 criteria that matter for that decision. You could say an algorithm would decide for yes if there are 4 or more reasons speaking for it, otherwise no. And then of course there's no freedom anymore. The machine will take every decision for us. But we could also build this system where basically the machine would decide for yes if the situation is clear what needs to be done, and for no if the situation again is clear. But in between, actually depending on how we would weigh those different criteria, maybe we should take this or that decision. This is where human judgment should be allowed to come in. So basically, yes, we want to be supported by AI systems in our daily lives, and certain things make sense to be automated, but not everything. There are decisions that are really important to us, which we still want to take ourselves. So for example, the choice of our partner or our friends, I guess we wouldn't want to leave just to an algorithm. So decision points need to be built in. And some people may want to take more decisions by themselves and others less, so it should be possible to determine that in the software platforms. Okay, and then also I believe we'll enter a second stage of the digitization, where basically we would go away from top-down power and control to empowerment and coordination, because basically, yes, processing power is exponentially exploding, data volume is increasing even faster, but systemic complexity, as we go on networking the world, is increasing even faster than that. So paradoxically, even though we have the best technology ever and more data than ever, we're losing control of the world as we try to control it in a top-down way. So instead, we need to have a distributed control, which means more participation. And that also means, why don't we go away from these over-regulated systems towards systems that support good decisions? And in fact, this can now be done with the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things can help us make self-organization work. 300 years after Adam Smith's invisible hand concept, which often hasn't worked without the support of technology. And for example, we can overcome traffic jams in many cases by mechanism design, by changing the interactions between the cars. So adaptive cruise control systems, if they're designed in a suitable way would actually stabilize traffic flow and increase capacity. In this way, allow us to dissolve traffic jams. And it doesn't need to be based on a centralized traffic control. All of them will be based on real-time measurement and feedbacks and changing interactions as needed to allow for a favorable self-organization. And we've also come up with a self-organized traffic light control, where the traffic flow controls the traffic lights rather than the other way around. And surprisingly, because it's an NP-hard optimization problem, by the way, this is working much better than today's traffic light controls through control centers. Now, we can extend this new paradigm towards new versions of smart cities. So, Smart City 1.0 is basically technology driven. And then we would go to technology enabled. But, human decision making would come in again. And then citizen co-creation and design for values are those things that would matter in the future for the smarter cities concepts, right? But one of the biggest problems that we're faced with is actually lack of sustainability. Every one of us is producing 50 tons of waste in a lifetime. These are furniture, cars, computers, smartphones, a lot of things that would actually be good for other people. And I don't think actually there's lack of resources for the world, but we're just using them not well enough. So how can we change this? I think a circular economy would be favorable, but it cannot be efficiently enforced by regulation. But we can use the Internet of Things in order to map noise and CO2 and resources and externalities, that means effects and impacts of our behavior on other people and the environment. And then what you want to achieve is that positive externalities would be increased and negative reduced, and there would be a fair compensation. And that could be reached by a multi-dimensional real-time feedback and coordination system that you could see as a multi-dimensional incentive system, or how we call it, a finance system 4.0, a social-ecological finance system. This multi-dimensional, it could bring together Internet of Things and blockchain technology, for example, and in this way it would create new market forces that would drive a co-evolution towards a circular economy because of those new incentives. So producing in an environmental friendly and a socially friendly way would be rewarded, because there's not just dollars or euros, but there are other things that matter and would be rewarded. And of course, the sharing economy would be an important part of that circular economy. And so that very principle can be also extended towards the social realm. And we can build systems that assist people self-organization. I've been publishing quite a bit about it, and people are talking a lot about super intelligent systems and imagine them as kind of AI God, that knows everything better. But then there are different versions, like the punishing God, which is kind of the Chinese system with the social citizen score, and whatever you do in deviation of what the AI system would tell you would be punished. But we could, on the other hand, also build kind of a loving AI God, which basically supports good interaction. So if people want to do something that is good for nature, for the environment or ecosystem, if they do something that would be in a sense of solidarity and social cooperation, that could be boosted by AI, while kind of selfish motives wouldn't necessarily be supported. So we could use these systems really to make good things happen much more easily without telling us what to do, and this is how we should be using that kind of technology. So basically, I believe the success principle of this future digital society we want to live in would be co-learning, co-creation, coordination, cooperation, and co-evolution. And so I hope you would be a game changer. you would engage into responsible innovation, into digital enlightenment, design for values, digital empowerment, and informational self-determination. That would be the world I would like